Hello, hello, hello. Am I live? Okay, cool, cool. What is up, everyone? What up, Elwood? How you guys doing? Going over Dolphin schedule pretty quick, Schedule release was yesterday. Not a day I know people get like excited for it. It's just, whatever. But it is, interesting to dig through it. Maybe make some predictions, go over the games that I think will be the key parts of this season. Overall, I will say, I do think the schedule is actually pretty favorable for Miami in terms of I don't think it's the toughest schedule. There are some things where they probably could have gotten a little more helped out, but we will go all over that in a second. I wanted to go over this. Shout out James Foster on Twitter, No Flags Film. He posted this of Cameron Wake. Just brought me back. Cam Wake, man. Look at these rushes, man. He was so good. His dip rip around the edge and his speed to power, the moves he would use, mixing up the pace, and he was just so explosive and powerful. He was the best part of those teams. I would say Cam Wake, that era, that 2010s era, Cam Wake was the GOAT of Miami, man. Just reminiscing about this. Andrew Luck strip sack. I actually didn't see every clip in this. I wonder if it's going to show the Bengals safety play. I don't know if it will. But look at that. The hump move. All these at left defensive end because he is a left defensive end. Yes, taking down Brady. Him and Rashad Jones were probably my favorite players back in that time. We see Sue out there. Dolphins had pretty good defensive line. But yeah. Just wanted to reminisce. So yeah, Olivier Vernon. I'm just recognizing names. There's Kiko Alonso. Interesting. But yeah, just wanted to show that. Also, actually kind of wanted to shout this out real quick. I know, Julian Hill will sometimes, get some hate, but there was a, cool article right here about him done by Tyler Dunn. I would check that out. His home life growing up. Just wanted to give those things some quick shout outs. And then, yeah, one other thing I wanted to talk about before the schedule real quick is basically Adam Schefter had mentioned that there's a more interest in Jalen Ramsey than people realize. So, hey, drive up that price. Give me more of a pick than I'm expecting, and I'll love that. But it probably won't happen until June. Or it might be announced before June, but the trade won't process until after June 1st for cap reasons, obviously. So I'm expecting that to happen in the next couple of weeks. Yeah, let's get into the schedule. Dolphins, have technically, they have, 8 home games, 8 away games. They technically have a 9th home game in Madrid, but it's not really what we got going on here. So, boom. F11. And yeah, here's the schedule. So, week 1, we have the Colts away. Week 2, New England at home. Week 3, first Thursday night game of the season. Oh God, the primetime games. We have 5 primetime games and 6 if you count Madrid, which it's not necessarily a primetime game, but it's all up there. Then we play Jets Monday night, Panthers, Chargers, Browns, Falcons, Ravens. This is the toughest stretch of the schedule. Ravens, Bills, Washington. Then you get a bye. Nice little reset, hopefully. Saints, Jets, Steelers, Bengals, Bucks, Patriots. So I'd say this is actually a pretty easy start, which actually I think is a good thing for Miami. I think it's a good thing to build some momentum early on. I think the first 2 games are obviously very winnable. Surprisingly, the Colts are actually favored right now, and I'm guessing they're favored by 1.5, which means they're only favored because it's a home game for them. And the Colts roster isn't necessarily bad. They have a decent roster, but they don't have good quarterback play. Their quarterback's either going to be Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones. So hopefully, I think, you should start off the season with a win, in my opinion. We'll go through and actually do predictions, even though I think predicting at this point can be kind of pointless sometimes because there's so much variance and so much that can change. Week 2 at home versus New England. That's going to be the biggest difference, I think, this year is, can you actually sweep New England? And then if Tua stays healthy, sweep the Jets? Because I think the Jets will be. I don't know if they'll be. I think if Tua is healthy, you should beat the Jets. The Patriots are going to be better this season. I think they're going to actually give you more of a problem. Like you've kind of beaten them pretty handily when you've had Tua in the lineup, so that will be interesting. Bills, I'm not going to pick them over the Bills. You can't do it until they actually show it. They've only really shown it once. Now, Tua did have one of his best games of the season last year versus Buffalo, the second one in Buffalo, so maybe that can be continued to build upon. You get Jets and New England. Like you're starting off 3 divisional games in the first 4. I kind of like to break down the schedules into 4x4s, but yeah, well, let me back out of that real quick so I can. But yeah, I think the biggest weakness is you really only have 2 in the first 2 months, September, October. You only have 2 home games at the 1 o'clock window. You have a Monday night game, so I think that is kind of where like you kind of lose your 1 o'clock heat advantage, which sucks. But then you only really have 3 cold games potentially, like December cold games. It's Jets, Pittsburgh, and New England, which I think are all winnable cold games, which I think could definitely help them out. Because usually when the Dolphins are playing their late season cold games, a lot of them are tough matchups. None of those are gimmies, but none of those are for sure losses either. Primetime is tough. Dolphins have not been very good in primetime in the McDaniel era. And most of the primetime games are not great. Like the Ravens will be tough. Bills will be tough. The Washington game in Madrid will be tough. Steelers Monday night and Jets Monday night are probably the most winnable, but those I think are pretty 50-50 in my mind. And then you play the Bengals on Sunday night, which I think is also a pretty tough game. Should be no 4 o'clock games, true. I don't see any. 1 p.m., 8:15, 7:15, 1, 8:15, 9:30. Yeah. Unless the New England game is 4 o'clock, week 18, because it's TBD. But that's like the only thing that could be. But I think, honestly, the Dolphins start. Oof. Okay, so you start off here. I think the Dolphins can easily start 3-1. So I like to look at the first, like, I used to break it down into 4-4-4-4, but now there's 17 games, so one's going to be auto out. But I think the Dolphins can pretty easily start 3-1. I'm going to say they're going to lose to the Bills week 3. You can't give it to them over the Bills. Thursday night versus Buffalo. They've struggled in Buffalo. They haven't beat Josh Allen in Buffalo. So that's a loss. I think they should win the first 2 games. Like the Colts, I think, are one of the most dysfunctional teams right now, and they have one of the worst quarterback plays. You can't start out slow against them, though. Last year, the Dolphins kind of started slow week 1 last year against the Jags. They end up winning that game, but they probably shouldn't have. They kind of got lucky. So you can't start slow against them. You lost to Indianapolis last year, but you didn't have Tua. Obviously, going into the season, I'm not as worried about that. We just have to hope he stays healthy in the game itself. Then week 2 versus New England. I think New England's going to be better this year, but I think at home, I'm still going to give Miami the edge. I still think Miami will be a better team. I think we'll see some growth from Drake May, but I do still think the Dolphins should beat New England at home. I think in New England will be a lot tougher. So I would say the Dolphins start 2-0, and then going into week 3. So honestly, starting 2-0 is probably a good thing because the Dolphins have a lot of question marks going into the season. If you can start 2-0, you have 2 very winnable games. Very winnable. That could be a huge momentum shift for the team. And maybe going to Buffalo, you at least compete. I'm hoping they at least compete with Buffalo. I don't want it to be like last year's first week or whatever. I think they played week 2 Buffalo Thursday night, and the Dolphins got blown out. Tua got hurt. It was a rough game. Now the second game versus Buffalo was a lot better. I hope they can at least show that form. They lost because the defense really struggled, and Raheem Mostert had a fumble. Jordan Poyer lost us that game with that really dumb, hitting the defenseless player at the end and got them in field goal range. Then you face the Jets Monday night. Now you're in Miami. I think in Miami games, I'm going to give the edge to the Dolphins versus New England and the Jets. I think on the road, those can easily flip. But I think I'm going to give it a 3-1. Now, if Tua is not healthy in any of these games, I would favor the other team in probably all of them. Anyone going to Madrid? No, that'd be sick, though. I might go to the Falcons game. That's the one game I think I could go to. Yeah. This schedule is very easy on paper, and it's not too bad in terms of the cold weather games. There's not a lot of like late season games like last year. The Dolphins schedule like the last couple seasons were like not that hard, but they had some like tough games in tough parts of the season. Where like this year, I don't really. There's a stretch here from week 9 to 11 is a tough stretch. But if they can win like one of those games, like I think they can beat Washington. If you catch Washington, like I think they can put up points on Washington. And we'll get to Washington in a second. But if you go back and watch what the Cowboys did against Jaden Daniels, I think that's a good plan to slow him down because Daniels had a really good rookie season, but he did struggle in those Cowboys games, especially that second one. But 3-1, and then they play against the Panthers. The Panthers away. Now, I do think the Panthers are probably will be a better, more of a tougher challenge, especially on the road than people think. I don't think that's some gimme, but with Wake, don't forget they held him 9%. Yeah, I mean they're always holding my guy Wake, but yeah, that's not. I don't think the Panthers game is a gimme, especially on the road. They were looking better at the end of last season. I think Bryce Young's kind of turning up. That one's not a gimme, so that one could be like a surprise loss. I would probably still favor Miami at this point. It is weird to say like Miami would be 4-1. I think 3-2 is also pretty likely at this point. They could throw a game against like the Jets or something. But week 6, I think week 6 is a big one. I think these games were like their real coin tosses are like the flipping points of the season. The Chargers in Miami. Now, I think the Chargers are actually a good team. I think with Harbaugh, they actually have like a good, well-balanced team. Last time Miami faced the Chargers was week 1 of that 2023 season. It was probably the best game of Tua's career. But the time they faced him before that, it was one of Tua's worst games of his career. Then obviously it's the Tua versus Herbert Bowl, which is always, people will argue it's going to be annoying. I'm not going to, comment too much on that. I think, both players are good. But it will be interesting. I think that's a huge tipping point in the season. I think that game being in Miami is huge, I think, because the Dolphins have actually, I think they're like a top 8 in travel miles, but like a majority, like a third of that is to Madrid. So they really don't travel that much outside of the Madrid game. I think, not traveling cross country is huge. You force the Chargers to cross country. That could give you that extra advantage. And it is one of your 1 p.m. home games. So I think this game is very winnable. And I think it's one of the more important games of the season in terms of you could win. So I'm going to say up until week 6. I'm not going to say 5-1. I think that's being too optimistic. I think 4-2 is actually pretty realistic going into week 6. I'm going to say they're going to lose to the Bills, and then one of the other games they end up throwing. But I think that Chargers game is very winnable. Week 7 versus the Browns in Cleveland in October. Last year the Dolphins beat. I don't think the Browns are a good team at all. Last year you beat the Browns with Huntley at quarterback. It was like the only team you ever beat without Tua pretty much in the McDaniel era. Other than I think they beat the Jets at one time in a field goal matchup. I think the Dolphins can win that game. So I would say 5-2. The Falcons game. So I think the Chargers game and the Falcons game in the first 8 are the biggest in my opinion, because I think this is a coin toss. I think you're getting to the middle of the season. I think the Falcons are kind of similar, the Dolphins, sort of seen as a middle of the pack team. You have Penix, who's kind of an unknown variable at this point. He showed some promise last year, but we don't know exactly what to expect from him. And the rest of the Falcons team is pretty decent. They have some good parts, some not so good parts. I think you can put up points on them. So I think that could be a tipping point, kind of going in to this part of the season, whether you're, kind of flip that around. But let's say, I think they can, in Atlanta too will be tough, but I mean, it is in a dome. I think when the Dolphins play on the road and it's in a dome, they're typically pretty fine that you can put up offensive points, especially if Tua is healthy. So maybe I'm going to say in the first 8, I think they can go 6-2, 5-3. I think 6-2 is actually not that crazy, even though the Dolphins right now don't look the greatest on paper. We'll see what they keep adding. Then you get into your tough stretch where you could easily lose all 3. I'm hoping they win 1. I'm going to give it to the Ravens, even in Miami. I think they could potentially compete against Ravens in Miami on a Thursday night game. Last time they played Ravens on a Thursday night in Miami, they actually won, and it was Tua versus Lamar. Actually, we started that game with Jacoby Brissett, but we brought Tua in. It was the Flores era. But I'm going to say they lose that, say the 6-3. And they're just a better team. They absolutely blew you out last time you played them. Then the Bills again. It's in Miami. Maybe it gives you a better shot, but I'm not going to pick Miami over Buffalo until I see it happen, which it never does. So, let's say at that point we're 6-4 heading into Week 10. Then the Washington Madrid game. I think this is similar to the Chargers Falcons, a huge game in the season. Washington was pretty good last year. I think they're going to be pretty good this year. I think Daniels shows a lot of promise. But this is like the one where like I think the Dolphins will not be favored. But this is one of the games where like I could see them upsetting. I think Dan Quinn's the D coordinator. He does like to run a lot of cover 3, cover 1 stuff. He likes to run a lot of single high. Last time we did face a Dan Quinn defense, it was that Cowboys defense. We did beat them. It wasn't our best offensive performance. We didn't finish. But I do think overall Miami has a pretty good, like, that Shanahan tree has had a pretty good success against Dan Quinn defenses. So I actually think the offense can have a pretty quality day. And I think there is a blueprint out there, and maybe you catch them in a sophomore slump. So this would be like my upset, I think, of the season, potentially. Where I think they could actually pull off the upset. So it's obviously super, super early. So what did I have aside? That was like 6-4. Let's say 7-4. Then you get a nice bye. You come back. 7-4 is being generous, honestly. I'm probably being too optimistic on these. Things can change. If Tua's injured, if Tua misses time, you probably lose those games, and that could easily bring your record down. Saints, I think you beat the Saints at home. That would be like 8-4. I'm actually going to say they lose to the Jets, split with the Jets, just try to bring it back to a more realistic thing. 8-5. Beat. Honestly, looking at this, I think Steelers, Bengals, Buccaneers, Patriots to close it out. I think they kind of like split those games. Probably lose to the Bengals. Like Bengals, Steelers, maybe win one of those, lose the other one. Buccaneers, Patriots, maybe win one, lose the other. Like I think there's a realistic path to getting 10 wins. I think 9 wins is probably the safest at this, looking at the schedule. Like 9 wins on an easy schedule, and then also kind of trying to consider potentially potentially what's going to happen with injuries and stuff like that. And I think the Dolphins line is 8.5. So if Tua misses multiple games, then they probably could easily go under that or go like 7-8, something like that. But if he stays healthy, considering this schedule, how it's formatted, I could see them winning 10 games, which it's kind of a surprise because I don't think overall it's the greatest team the Dolphins have had in recent time. Yeah, I agree, Teddy. I think if we look at these games, I think the upsets that the Dolphins could have, I think Washington could potentially be an upset. I think maybe like the Bengals game is a game they could upset because I don't think the Bengals have the best defense. And I think you could, I think the Bengals O-line is rough too. I think the Dolphins actually match up pretty well against them. Those are teams that are kind of better. But the games where I think they could get upset is, I think, the Panthers game. I think the divisional matchups are very important. I don't know which. I think the Jets Patriots probably won't even be considered upsets wherever they play. And then I think like Steelers Buccaneers, those will probably be considered pretty even. Those will be huge games at the end of the season because I think those will be like 50-50s pretty much considered. So we'll see how those play out. But like I don't know. I think 10 wins is like actually very realistic without being like an overly, optimistic, maybe, fan bias thing playing in there. And 10 would most likely get you into the playoffs because it usually does. I do agree. Yeah, and Samuel, I think the Dolphins' plan this offseason was to potentially get better in cold weather games because they got bigger, more physical. And I think this is the year to actually win some cold weather games because of your matchups. Typically in the past, like the only cold weather game you won last season was the Cleveland one. But the other cold weather games were just, it felt like the perfect storm would come together, It'd be a cold weather game. It would be a very good team. And it would also be like a prime time game, which are like where all the areas where the Dolphins have struggled, they would all meet at one. But it seems like this year it's not quite that. Like the Jets and Patriots, not super hard opponents. I mean, they're games you could lose, but those are games you could also win. You are used to playing in that environment as well. The Steelers one now is like, not a bad team. They have no quarterback, but they're not a bad team outside of that. It is a Monday night game, so that is one where it's like it does fit into that prime time thing. But last year was like the Packers, and the Packers last year was a better team than I think the Steelers this year. So they're all like pretty winnable, and I think you put yourself in a better spot. Like this schedule is not that crazy. I don't know what's Madrid going to be like in mid-November. Is Madrid? I don't know what Madrid's weather situation is like, so that could also be. And I don't even know the stadium, like what the stadium is they're playing it, because it could be like a dome situation. I'll have to look into that. I don't know that off the top of my head. Yeah. That will be interesting. I also saw this chart. This was posted by Dudley Do Wrong. But basically, there is like the pass efficiency, like their defense efficiency the last season. The Dolphins actually have like a top 5 easy in weeks 1 to 8 facing pass defenses. So like they don't face the best pass defenses to start out the season. So hopefully Dolphins can take advantage. I think they also, like, I don't know if you guys saw it, the Colts took down their video because they posted like one of their like scheduled videos showed Tyreek Hill getting arrested as a Dolphin. Hey, Tyreek, take it out on Indianapolis in week 1, please. Do something. Also, some other random stuff that I have seen. What was it? Oh yeah, 33rd team posted. Tua Tagovailoa has had the highest success rate on throws beyond the sticks of any QB over the last 2 seasons, 62.1%. Next is Goff at 61%, Purdy at 60.3%. A lot of the guys that are like the very efficient pocket passer quarterbacks. And Tua is at the top. Also, I did the Matthew Butler film breakdown yesterday. The Dolphins claimed Matthew Butler. He's intriguing. Usually, like, I didn't make a video on Kendall Sheffield because it was like, to me, Sheffield was just like a camp body. There wasn't really much to break down. And the Dolphins have made some like small signings on that I just didn't feel the need. So, but like, I watched the Butler stuff and I'm like, okay, I can see the vision there. So I felt like there was a need for it. Like, I could see him actually making the roster and being a potential like rotational type of guy. And he fits the scheme. He fits exactly what you're kind of missing. Yeah, I don't know why they gave us so many primetime games. Like, I felt like we get like, honestly, I was guessing we'd get like 3, you know, like every team gets a Thursday night game, but they gave us 2 Thursday night games, which is crazy. I hate Thursday night games. And then they gave us, we usually don't even have Sunday night games. We're usually, we get like a Thursday night and then maybe a couple Monday nights. And then we have played in like those Madrid, like not Madrid, but like in the London stuff. We played in Germany that one time. But they gave us a Sunday night game, 2 Monday nights, 2 Thursday nights, and Madrid. It's like, damn. Are they actually expecting us to be that good? It's kind of crazy. Yeah. With 10 days of rest, we beat Buffalo. That is a good point. Buffalo in Miami, we will have 10 days of rest. So maybe that gives us the extra opportunity. It could help out. It's why I don't really like doing predictions at this point of the year, because so much changes, man. Like pretty much everything I just said could be pointless if Tua is injured. And who knows, maybe your O-line gets injured and all of it could be pointless as well. Or sometimes like these teams you're talking about, sometimes they're just playing way worse than expected. Sometimes they have injuries, or sometimes they're like playing way better than expected. So much changes. That's why like I don't put too much stock into the schedule stuff until we actually get to it. I think it's much easier to make those predictions like the week beforehand, where like you can break down the film, see how they're playing, see how teams match up, go like fully into depth. We are going to be awesome. That is why I go fence. Hey, I love the optimism. I hope so. That is true. I don't know. We usually don't have very exciting primetime games. We've had some that are pretty back and forth over the years. There was like that one in Buffalo that we lost, but it was in the snow. Barely lost. But for the most part, yeah, we don't play the most exciting ones. Yeah, I mean, I don't mind it per se, because like you have to prove the narrative wrong eventually. Because if you can't overcome the primetime thing, like I do think there has been a bad storm. Like, I don't think it's always necessarily been primetime problems. Like, I think it's been a combo of like all your primetime games that you've lost and looked really bad in are like the cold weather stuff, and you're playing really good teams. So I think it's a combination of like all your weaknesses. I don't even know if it's necessarily primetime. It literally just might be the cold weather, and like the teams are just you're facing are better. So, but they need to be able to prove this narrative wrong. So I don't necessarily mind it from that perspective, as if you cannot prove it wrong eventually, then you need to move on anyways. What a do, Ryder. You and Kyle are the most knowledgeable when it comes to covering the Dolphins. Thanks for what you do. Hey, appreciate that, DG Dawn. Yeah, Kyle's really good too. I've never like met or talked to Kyle, but he's definitely very knowledgeable whenever I've checked him out. And I know, like, I think I even knew about, I think when he was doing mostly draft stuff, like I knew about like him and that group, because I do a lot of draft things as well. But yeah, he's also a Dolphins fan, so that is always nice. The play calling will be key. Yeah, I think the biggest difference this year offensively will be being able to run the ball. So as long as your O-line stays healthy, I think that will be like basically the cog that keeps the machine flowing. Because when the Dolphins had their most success in 2023, the O-line was actually not that bad, and they like the offensive line in this scheme, it's actually not that hard to play as long as you can do some zone blocking, outside zone blocking stuff, which I think the offensive line on this team can, at least the starters. So I think if your O-line stays healthy, Tua stays healthy, those are some big ifs, obviously. The offense, I think, will be fine. Even if like you say we're missing a receiver or a running back, I think you can still find success if those two parts are still kind of clicking. Defensively, I think Weaver can do a good enough job. Yes, the secondary, like people are mentioning, is the issue. You can still win games and be successful defensively as long as your defensive front is getting a lot of pressure. But if they take away that, then you can find yourself in some rough spots. But like the Dolphins secondary didn't play that great last year anyways, and the Dolphins defense wasn't like horrible. So hopefully we can still find some stuff. It's still early. I think they could still add to that group. We'll see what happens. I think post June 1st is when stuff is really going to change. Where'd you rank Patrick Paul amongst this year's O-line draft as if he were into the draft in his current state? That's a good question, T. Let me think about that. Okay, let me check this out. I would put him behind the top guys. I would put him behind, like, for sure behind the top guys like Campbell, Banks, Membo, behind Simmons. Probably behind Connerly and Ursery, if you consider them tackles. But I think after that is probably where Paul would slide in. Like, I think he'd be ahead of Charles Grant, you know, some of these guys who are like guard tackle hybrids. Like, I'm considering Donovan Jackson a guard. Donovan Jackson, if he was a tackle, would probably be ahead of him. But I think after that, like, early, like I think Connerly went late first. Ursery went somewhere in the second. So I think he would probably be in like that second round tackle group. But that second round tackle group, after that, there was a huge fall off. Because like that's why I think the Dolphins took Patrick Paul last year, because they were kind of looking ahead thinking like, okay, one, Armstead has a ton of injuries, and two, we're trying to like the tackle class next year isn't as good as the one previous. So I think that was like clearly a future pick. They were dealing for that. All right, either breakdown what two corners is the best, not including Ramsey. Like on the Dolphins roster, honestly, I think Kohu has to be one of them. I know I've seen Kohu get kind of a bad rep from Dolphins fans, but he was actually probably your best DB last year in the second half of the season. Like he was even playing better than Ramsey for the most part, especially once we got to like that Texans game. He was playing like pretty consistent football. So I would say it has to be Cater. Just he has to be one of them outside of Ramsey for sure. The rest of the corner group, that is tough. A lot of people are unknowns right now. It is a lot of unknowns. Pretty much everyone's an unknown. Yeah, it might be Duck, at least in this system. I really want to see Bonner get a shot. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if it's Bonner. I would really like to see that happen. I'm so behind Dolphins news and developments. Yeah, the schedules come out. I don't know if you've seen it, Irving. Also, Schefter reported that like apparently teams are more interested in Jalen Ramsey than people think. So maybe we get more than for Ramsey than we're thinking, but that's probably not going to happen until after June 1st. Nothing else I think is really too much. We signed Matthew Butler. The Raiders cut him. We claimed him. I made a film breakdown on him. I think Butler, there's been a lot of guys we've added that are like more camp bodies. I think Butler's one that actually has a chance of making it. So I did make a video on him, and he has an interesting skill set. Yeah, that would be cool, Don. I might have to hit him up at some point. The offense isn't necessarily good. We need to average more than 14 points per game. Oh, yeah, for sure. I just think this year, if the QB and the O-line are relatively healthy, I think the offense will be quite good. Last year wasn't good because you had a poor O-line and Tua was injured. When Tua was injured, you couldn't do anything. And even when Tua came back, your offense was still inconsistent because you had no run game. I think the run game will be better this year with the starters. I think if 4 out of the 5 are healthy, you'll be fine. I think once you start going below 4 out of 5, then you find yourself in trouble. Then obviously we've seen the team with when we put the backups in. I think the backups will be better this year at QB than in previous years, but I don't think it will be a big needle mover for them. So I do expect more from the offense this year for sure. I think it will be closer to 2023 than 2024. And then defense, I think, will be the biggest question mark because you don't really know what's happening in the secondary right now. Really, the biggest downfall of the offense last year is you couldn't run block. They literally, once Austin Jackson went down with injury, they literally could not run the ball at all. Like they were averaging less than like 3 yards per carry so many times. And if you can't run the ball, this offense is going to hit a lot of snags because you love to use play action, RPO. Like that's why they kept running so many screens, is because they couldn't run the ball last year. The screens were basically an extension of the run game, and not being able to run your play action, your run stuff, allow more time to develop in the pocket. They couldn't push the ball down the field like they did in the 2022-2023 seasons. Because in those seasons, they pushed the ball down the field quite a lot. I feel like people kind of forget that. They think the Dolphins are screen merchants, but they weren't really like that before the 2024 year. So when the Dolphins draft Patrick Paul the second year early, they did not gain any value with the pickup. I think we didn't need a tackle-only player. I mean, I didn't love the pick to begin with, but I think the thought process is last year's tackle class, or the tackle class previously wasn't, or the one in the future wasn't as good, and they were looking ahead to the future. Plus, they were also thinking like Armstead injuries, and they needed a swing because Armstead and Jackson missed multiple games, so Paul did have to play multiple times. Oh yeah, I mean, health has been the key for us falling apart pretty much the last 3 seasons. Yeah, appreciate it. Would being able to throw outside the numbers be helpful on offense? I mean, it would probably help in certain situations to be able to do it more consistently, but like they do throw outside the numbers. It's just not the bread and butter of the offense. I think the run game is the key. If you can run, you can do a lot of stuff because we've seen it where like when our play action game is working, we're throwing like deep comeback 20 yards outside of the field, and then Tua's hitting them with anticipation. And Tyreek and Waddle are getting 1-on-1s, and when they're 1-on-1 with that much room, they can get open. And if Tua's throwing with anticipation, he can easily make those throws. It's just when he has to get rushed, he doesn't have the arm strength to always do it consistently if he's not throwing it early. And if guys are not respecting the deep ball, then they can maybe sit on those routes. There's a lot of things that go into it. Yeah, any more questions? We went over the schedule. nothing too crazy to go down over today. I think next stream we'll go like super in depth on like players and stuff. I haven't quite decided, but I think before the camp start, I want to go by like each position and kind of break down each room. Yeah, any final questions? Hit me with them. I'll give you guys a chance. Yeah. Hey, next year's QB class is pretty good. Like I started watching some of the next year's QB class. There's a lot of talent in next year's QB class, so we'll see. It's obviously a long time away. So much can change. We don't know. Yeah. You think we could start hot? I do. I think the schedule shows like you can easily have a hot start with, I think, a lot of winnable matchups, but none of them are really gimmies. So Dolphins have to be prepared, and hopefully they can have a pretty hot start, at least start with a winning record in like the first 6. Thoughts on second year of Weaver defense? I'm excited. I'm expecting to see more stuff done up front, because I think when you look at the Weaver style defense and what he's bringing, like what they do in like Seattle and Baltimore, they do a really good job of marrying the front with the coverage stuff. That's why I think having such a good front can really help out the secondary, even more so in the Weaver stuff, because they literally mix and match a lot of their different pressure packages with their coverage packages, and I'm expecting to see more press man stuff mixing up. I loved his coverage disguise. I really think that was like his biggest thing, and I think he brought in people, at least at safety, that will be comfortable doing the disguise coverage works. With Melifonwu, I think Trader would be someone that feels pretty comfortable doing that. He seems like a very smart player, so I think he's in a tough spot when you look at it from a secondary perspective, but I think that D-line's going to feast. Yeah. Do you think they'll use Armstrong in the red zone as a jump ball receiver? I don't think that's really their type. If he makes the roster, he might, get a couple of those, but I don't think that's like they're just going to throw him in there and just throw him fades. I think they're still going to have to use their guys. They're going to still use Jonnu. I think you might see Nick Westbrook get that before they would give that to Armstrong. Who do you think will make the Dolphins their UDFAs? I would say probably one of the receivers, probably Armstrong or Weiss. I would say probably, I think Saunders has a shot. If any of the safeties kind of get injured, I think he probably finds his way in there. Or if he has a really good camp preseason, they gave him good money. I think guaranteed money is always a good sign. They want to keep those people around, and that means other teams are fighting for them. So that means they might be scared to cut him. So I would say 1, 2. Let's see. I would say Conyers. And then I think BJ Adams. I think 3 or 4 will make it. And there's some other sleeper, maybe some sleeper. I think maybe an O lineman could also make it, but I don't think those are more so. We'll see what happens with injuries and stuff. But I'm going to make a video. I've made a video on Addison West. I'm going to make a video on Teddy Cushy. I got more film on Western Michigan, so I finally have a Teddy Cushy film breakdown. He's actually interesting. Teddy Cushy is probably better than some of the more recent guys I did that I think are more practice squad or even not going to make the roster. Or like not even make the practice squad either. I think Cushy would be a nice practice squad developmental guy, or maybe even make back into the roster. He's a tackle only guy, but he's interesting for sure. But I think like Armstrong, Saunders, Conyers, Adams are like top 4 most likely. Please don't. Yeah, I don't think we're going to be throwing too many fades. I don't think that's really the game plan anymore, but hopefully we can find more red zone and short yardage success. That's a huge, I think, thing for the offense, is being better in the red zone, which I think they added guys that could help you in the red zone, just running the ball wise, and short yardage, which offensive line usually help that out. So that was a big problem with the offense last year, is you really struggled in the red zone and in short yardage. If you get better at those two, that could completely change the whole outlook